this room. My name is Stein, and as it says here, I'm the president of the organization. I have been since April 15th, 2024, a very easy date to remember because that's obviously tax day here in the United States. Come on, Peter, why not?
Peter's here.
Yeah, and for people who've been coming to our events, you'll notice that we've actually swapped the room. So Peter, it's good to see you. Well, so thank you all for coming. I wanted to give a thank you before I start to the Consular Corps Association, who has been partnering with us on the Ambassador series, and particularly Krista Bard as well, who will actually introduce our speaker. I will not. And I wanted to, in case you're new to FPRI, explain what we are. You'll see on the banner behind you, not here, that we're actually good Saturday this month. So this is our platinum celebration. And we will be doing a series of events throughout the year. Here's a person in the office that I would encourage all of you to attend. And with that, Krista, I want to turn the floor over to you before we start the presentation. And she says she doesn't need a mic, so
We'll test it. Good evening, everybody.
Good
So in Lithuanian, labas vakaras. You think we can manage that? Bravo, all right. It really is an honor to be here this evening. And I'd like to begin by thanking FPRI. They are, I mean, you've been coming here to events. They're celebrating the 70th anniversary, but also it is the 10th anniversary of the Baltic Initiative. Here we go. And they are the first and the only think tank in the US with a Baltic Initiative. So we are particularly grateful to the organization. It's a note of surprise. And in terms for the presentation, for those of you who know me, I don't ordinarily have notes, but Ambassador Bajarunas has such an extraordinary amount of experience, a depth and a breadth that you will when he speaks. But I would take up the whole presentation if I read everything. So I'm going to give you a précis, a very short summary. He has served as the ambassador, Lithuanian ambassador to the UK, Russia, Sweden, Portugal, Oman, Uzbekistan, and non-resident. And Consul General in St. Petersburg, Russia, Deputy Ambassador at the Mission of Lithuania to NATO in Brussels, Ambassador at Large for hybrid threats, Diplomatic Advisor to the President of Lithuania, Consultant to the NATO Affairs Commission in Lithuanian Parliament. He has, I love this, he has an undergraduate degree from the University of Vilnius in mathematics, and his master's is in war studies from King's College in London. In addition to that, we'll do a little world tour. He studied in London, Brussels, Stockholm, Oberammergau, and Prague. So it is a truly an honor and pleasure to have Ambassador Eitvydas Bajarūnas here. And I won't ask you all to say, can I tell them your nickname?
You must. Now you have to.
It's a difficult name. My real name is So when the ambassador was studying in England, they gave him a nickname and they called him Eight. So
Non-existent Lithuanian name.
it's not, yeah, no, we don't do that nickname there. So you may call him that tonight when you speak with him. Or Mr. Ambassador.
okay. Thank you, Krista. I did forget to tell everybody to silence their cell phone because I just did that myself. So if you want to do that now quickly, I'd encourage you to. So, just Ambassador, I also studied at King's College. I didn't know that about you. 2010 to 2014 for a PhD. And not war studies. That was a bad decision on my part. But you were the last Lithuanian ambassador to Russia before you were asked to leave by the parties at hand. So I just kick off this conversation, why were you asked to leave? And two, I think as parenthetical to that, we're all struggling with trying to get in the mind of Vladimir Putin. Why did he sanction sort of the re-invasion of Ukraine in 2022? You're a frontline state, you're from a frontline state, and you were in sort of the belly of the beast when this thing happened. So perhaps, expound on those two questions as we get going.
Well, look, how I will cope with this. It's another representation from on my career. But first, I also might do this formal now part. Maya, thank you. Our friend was Maya. What here? There was Krista who came into the picture, and of course, thank you the institute which volunteered to simply have all the arrangements. Still, my way possible. Aaron, thank you for cheering. So I might start with this first question, then go into more broader. First of all, sometimes I speak very fast. It's very Kalashnikov. So stop me, say, no, Ambassador, we still have some time. Don't rush. So I try to speak slowly. At least you manage. So you're absolutely right. We ambassadors, like soldiers, we're not deciding when to go to the country and when to go out of the country. So when the war started, and I was in the period of war, we call this war. Many more wars. People would say the war started in 2014. This is continuation, but I refer to this hot conventional war cases of current war. So the war started April 24, 2022. I was just wake up in my office, wake up from my bed, and because there was already, you probably remember those who follow foreign policy like we are professionals, like we do. You probably remember this was already in the year something would happen. US and other countries started to accuse Russia, but Russia was saying no, please, this is traditional Russophobic Western view. But we professionals, we knew that there would be something, and actually, I, like all Western ambassadors, we're quite ready that each day we can be asked to go out of the country. So I thought that if eventually Russia will reach Kiev, arrest or kill Zelensky, and Lithuania will definitely break diplomatic relations with Russia, and that would eventually mean all embassy would be evacuated. So we were ready. So I was asking my colleagues to get rid of the non-essential stuff, or actually to send home, including families. Of course, I should not mention this as together with the staff, but that was reality. We were calculating that in case of the war, we might be asked, all of us, to go. But war started. Thanks God, this vision of Putin to occupy Kiev in 3 days was implemented. Then of course, EU and NATO and United States started to make a punitive measure against Russia, sanctions. Not only sanctions, but also we started to send Russian diplomats out from our countries. Now, traditionally, in Russian embassies, we have a lot of Russian spies, and we know
spies. Oh yeah, okay.
And of course, we know our security services know. So our security services, Lithuania, Britain, America, they are happy to get rid of Russian. But of course, the punishment, they are sending our diplomats out. So we will continue in this war of attrition, diplomatic attrition with Russia, but ambassadors were still in place. Why we need ambassador when war started? Of course, this is our life was very, very isolated. We were not being able to do anything more than to meet some Russian interlocutors, still to try to understand the same question you are asked: why Putin started? Because there were no reason for him to start. He was doing so well in all this hybrid warfare, trying to manipulate with all these narratives, and I thought he will never start this hot phase of the war, but he started. So I was continued to be in the war. Russian sanctions started to hit Russia, and the first days I was really very hopeful the sanctions will hit Russia enormously. Imagine you go with your Visa card and it's not functioning. So when SWIFT was cut off, all the money flows were cut off, and you go to the luxury goods shops in Moscow. I was doing this, what do you say, reconnaissance, so try to see myself, not only read newspaper, but how some restaurants started not to function, and I thought, wow, this is the end of Russian economy. And now, after nearly 3 years, we stand in the situation where Russia's economy is up and running, even growing. So I don't know whether you remember this. What we remember well, this period, Bucha massacres.
Mhm.
So around beginning of April, when Ukrainians liberated part of the territories, and especially around Kiev, which were taken by Russians, they liberated, and they found quite a cruel picture. This is when Lithuania decided not to wait other countries, Western countries, like-minded countries, to react, but decided to lower rank of Russian status of Russian embassy, which meaning asking Russian ambassador to leave. So when you ask Russian ambassador to leave, of course, what to do with Lithuanian ambassador? So I got a call from Vilnius, say, okay, this evening, foreign minister will ask Russian to leave, and he wants you to leave. Okay, when? This evening. You go to your wife. Okay, so what is for dinner? So there's no dinner, and we need to pack. And this evening we're leaving. Oh, I negotiated next morning.
And how did you get out? Because many of the flights were canceled.
So there was still because we were quite adapted to this period of restricted transport links. We had this was finally this advantage to be next to Russia became disadvantages became advantages.
Right.
Contrary to our during COVID, contrary to our Western friends who were not able to fly out of Russia, we still managed to go by embassy car. So 6 o'clock in the morning, embassy car driver came with my wife. I crossed Russian border. Russians were not informed that I am leaving. So when I crossed Russian border, I knew that I will never come back to Russia, not in my lifetime. But you open your mobile phone and I take this SMS card. Wow! Oh, finally I'm free. And then 6 in the evening, we were in Vilnius in our home, and then we went to the Ukrainian restaurant.
I was about to say,
Restaurant to drink Ukrainian vodka. So this was ended my career, but I will bit start. So eventually this what Barda very rightfully Christo was rightfully read went through my point of my CV. Didn't explain one major element. Russia, I will explain. Russia was always somehow interrelated with my life. Of course, I was born in Soviet Union. I was raised by all ordinary Lithuanians. Lithuanians in my lifetime, which was 80s or 70s, 80s, when I grew as a teenager and then went to Vilnius University, mathematics. We were, there were some rumors of KGB doing some arrest, but it was Brezhnev period. It was not as cruel. There was few people, my friends, were arrested for saying not something polite against the Soviet government. But in general, we would buy beer with my friends and we would watch a hockey match, USSR, USA. And of course, we would say, USA. And we were not even afraid. We were not thinking that KGB might say, well, guys, what are you doing here? or to worse, there might be someone from us who would, which were happening. But somehow there was this is in the air. So Baltic countries were always a bit of different. I was a graduate of university, and I went to, I think I was student. I went to some conference in Siberia, Tolyatti. This is a famous town where the SS rockets are, and Kalashnikov actually produced. So I went to the conference, and this was perestroika was already in the year. And, oh, Lithuania, you're part of Russia, Soviet Union. Yeah, we are. But you have rubles. Yeah, wow. So Lithuania, Baltic countries' image inside Russia was quite different. Afterwards in my career as a consul general in St. Petersburg, in Moscow as ambassador, I would meet people and say, "Oh, Mr. Ambassador, my honeymoon was in Vilnius." Wow, when 75. Wow, because Vilnius was which month? January in Vilnius. What you were doing? No, but you would not believe. Out of Moscow, we go. There's a bit of old town of Vilnius, some cafeterias. Or what the guys is doing was with your wife, you know. But anyway, so it was a bit of different story. So sorry for.
Well, when were you consul general in St. Petersburg? What years was this?
I will quickly
Okay,
come to
because I'm curious if you.
So, and then Lithuania's liberation started a speedy way. 1990, Lithuania declared independence. That's from Soviet republics. March 11. I was already doing my PhD, and of course, many of my friends went either to defend parliament or to become part of government, and I ended up in Minister of Defense. In 1991, when after coup d'etat in August, when formally we became a recognized country. So, you know, like I was civilian. I was in Minister of Defense, but civilian. Like 10 of us, we were invited by minister. Guys, who speaks English? Okay, 5 of you. Okay, 5, come here. So you will be boss of international relations. I don't know anything about it. Yeah, that's why I started to study. And my first job in the Ministry of Defense was I was in this working group which was responsible for Russian army withdrawal.
Wow, okay.
So although we became independent in 1991, there was still Soviet army, which with the Russia becoming independent, became de facto Russian army. Soviet army became, and it was quite numerous, 60,000 Russian troops, 2 airborne divisions of Russia. Now Lithuania barely reached 20,000 of our national army. It was why? Because we were on western flank. Lithuania, Soviet Lithuania, all these troops were responsible for Danish straits. This was in case of the war, Danish straits. So there was quite a big deal. But 1981, 1982, you know, atmosphere in Russia was becoming better somehow, and Russia's attitude became better, and Russians left Lithuania in one of the first from Baltic countries in 1st September, I think 1st September 1993, and that was in a way decision of Lithuania's government then to let all Russians go, instead of trying to nationalize army, which made Ukraine, all other republics that were doing this. But this became eventually a big problem for all these republics, and eventually these countries which sort of embrace Soviet remaining armies in their system. Now Ukraine, why Ukrainians? I'm just why Ukrainians were so unsuccessfully defending the country in 2014? It's apparently very easy to understand. More than half of the country army was Russians, and they were not loyal to the country. Russians were into all the security services. So of course, for Russia to occupy, I actually eventually I don't know why Putin stopped in 2014. He would take half of Ukraine at least. Then 2022, picture was a bit different. Ukraine was strengthened. So Lithuania's Minister of Defense were young like me, non-professionals, or some former Lithuanian army officers from Soviet Union, but they were not very useful. They were thinking into the Soviet Union categories. So we brought Lithuanian army, which we thought the first way to integrate Lithuania before becoming member, which we became in 2004, is to send our guys as much as possible to various NATO operations. So 1995, 4 years Lithuania's independence, our small unit, I think this was not the whole company, platoon, went together with Danish troops in Operation Yugoslavia. And this became our landmark. Lithuania, we are small, you know, and we are consumer of security, but here we are, we contribute. When NATO went into other operations in Bosnia, in Iraq, and eventually in Afghanistan, Lithuanians was always, okay, we cannot send divisions, we cannot send air carriers to the operations, but we can contribute as much as by our size. So that was my first actually, when I was headhunted and became diplomat in 1995. My first assignment was to Brussels. So in Brussels, it was NATO, but it was quite a mixture of countries. Lithuania, who eventually trying to put our membership to NATO aspirations. There were Russia, which also became partner of NATO. There were other neutral countries, Sweden, Switzerland. So the atmosphere in this period with Russians was quite okay. You know, they withdraw from all these former republics. There was Yeltsin in the town, which with a bit of some democratic movement started elections, but NATO operation in Yugoslavia, 1991, was quite a big landmark. I remember even in NATO headquarters, I was still my job lasted until NATO summit 1999 in July, but you meet Russians, they were so unhappy
About Yugoslavia.
about Yugoslavia. NATO is bombing of Yugoslavia. NATO is, but look, NATO is not bombing Yugoslavia. NATO is defending Albanian population of Kosovo, because they were the Serbians or ex-Yugoslavia, they're killing them, and they're responsible for massive atrocities. But for Russians, it was, how can we were so much, you know, with NATO and with America, but this stereotype, of course, which eventually I found in many of my further engagements with Russia, NATO is enemy, and this is something like Ukraine is our country, the same NATO is enemy. In all my afterwards periods of my life, I would meet Russian and say, look, oh, Russian politician or NATO is enemy, I accept. Lithuania, oh no, you're a good country. Estonia, come on. Germany, okay, rough relations, historical legacy, you know, World War II, but you know, UK, oh, nice country, you know. Oh, London was where all the Russians will go and spend their money, go buy property. US, of course, it's enemy. No. So you go country by country, and you end up. So NATO is enemy. Oh my God! And this was why I believe this is still big stereotype. So I will jump. So when 2005, I was all my life. This new life of independent Lithuania was in Western direction, studying in London, assignment to Brussels, and I was asked to go as a consul general. I was a bit surprised.
St. Petersburg.
But St. Petersburg at least was, I don't know how now, but this was quite different. You would meet Russians who would say, oh, Moscow, Moscow. We in the Baltic region. The name Baltic is, in Lithuania, you might have this name used by some private companies, but in St. Petersburg, Baltic Bank, Baltic Beer, Baltic building, Baltic shipyard, everything was, they were so proud to be part of Baltic, and this legacy of Peter the Great, where St. Petersburg was window for the West, was really in the air. People were so proud that they are this most closest geographical apart from Kaliningrad. Mm-hmm. And then Putin in his first year, which, former KGB as a president. Yeah, but we have Reagan. Reagan was the head of the CIA.
Bush.
Bush. So what's wrong with that? Bush was working also in CIA, or I'm not mistaken.
HW was CIA, W was his son.
Yeah. So people say, but eventually these guys, KGB guys, they're even better because they knew during the Soviet period they had true information, contrary to the Communist Party leaders who would receive sort of filtered information about how bad is the West and how good we are. So okay, KGB guy, and eventually Putin's rhetoric was much more positive. We need to cooperate with West. But when I came to St. Petersburg in 2005, I already found, apart from this, Baltic country, Baltic republics, and I find quite different. This anti-Western feelings was already in the air. They say, Eitvydas, you like America? I said, yeah, what's wrong? America is bombing Yugoslavia. They're now, and this anti-Western rhetoric was coming, and it was I cannot explain. So look, United States were supporting you in this most difficult period, 1991. In Russia, they were still using this bush legs. Frozen chicken were shipped from United States to Russia. And for many Russian regions, this was quite big saving. And over Russia's US and the NATO and EU attempt to integrate Russia in various NATO-Russia Council. EU came with the concept of NATO-Russia strategic partnership. So, of course, minus membership. We cannot accept Russia as a member to NATO or EU, but apart from that, NATO was enlarging, but NATO was embracing Russia. And then, of course, Munich speech of Putin, and then, of course, the worsening of relations, Georgia's war, 2008. Again, I was consul general, and this anti-Georgian feelings was in the air. Georgians are most loyal republics from all the republics, because Georgians from the time of 19th century were actually Russians saved Georgians from massacre, because Persians were slaughtering Georgians. So if Russia came and take this now free countries, there was no country, there was Persian territory, but eventually it became Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, and they saved these countries. So Georgians most loyal, and the Russians were like sending. They would chase labor force Georgian origin, and they were sending them back, and it was quite a bad. But and this is where I would start my criticism. We the West, if I would associate with it. So when Russia invaded Abkhazia was already part, and then South Ossetia, what was NATO-EU reaction? We stopped our cooperation with Russia. Mm-hmm. And but then Obama came. Obama came with a reset policy. He needed Russia because of this northern supply route of Afghanistan, nuclear disarmament, and Obama, so Russians, no, if you're in Moscow, so Mr. Lavrov, foreign minister, what was Western reaction? Okay, next time we occupy, because that's what how they interpret in the Moscow. West is soft, and then of course it continues Russia's war now, and I would probably leave this with Q&A. So this
it leads a question. It was a very thorough answer, but
because we diplomats, we are paid by Mr. Ambassador, you're not anymore ambassador. Speak. I was wrong in my answers.
Yeah, but there was a lot of news today. So the questions I had prepared were sort of upended because Secretary of Defense Hegseth was in Germany today for the contact group about the support of Ukraine. And is currently as part of this meeting with the heads of NATO and obviously the defense minister tomorrow in the but there's pluses and minuses. The plus is that he reaffirmed the United States' commitment to NATO and Article 5. The negative is that it's quite clear that the United States is negotiating with President Putin without including NATO, Lithuania, anybody in the EU, and last of all, and Ukraine. That's what I'll get to. And so it's very clear where this is headed, is that there's going to be a summit between the two men, Trump and Putin, somewhere where they will agree to some sort of peace process, ceasefire. I don't know what we're going to call it yet. Again, you're a frontline state. What did you make of sort of the US president's move today in terms of the approach to the future of European security?
Look, here I really need to take all my hats of diplomat.
Okay.
I should be either you will see diplomatic answer, which will be about nothing, or about something, but eventually you say, oh, something, but then you go home and say, well, he said nothing. This is the trick. So I really try to be as frank. Okay, anyway, I'm now a visiting fellow of SIPA.
Yes.
And I will speak as an expert. So first of all, of course, with Trump the first and Trump the second, there is a bit of contemplation in Europe, in the Baltic, in Lithuania, what this guy is about.
Yeah.
We still remember this first period, which eventually was not bad. Ukraine received first lethal arms during the Bush period, during the Trump period, and sanctions after 2014 were still in place. So, and apart from his drastical sometimes move to say NATO is obsolete or we'll get rid of NATO, eventually Trump's decision to press on NATO countries to increase defense budgets became reality.
Mhm.
Obama was coming, and many other US presidents were coming to NATO summits saying, guys, you need to invest. But you say, yeah, but social programs, no, we have, of course, everyone have social programs. But Trump was very clear, either you will invest or no. And that's message was, so at the end, I think this, apart from the rhetoric, which sometimes we don't like, apart from sometimes his language, which unfortunately is very much sometimes resembles with the Putin's language. I need this territory, I need this territory, I need Crimea, I need. So for many Lithuanian Polish, very much resembles the language of Putin. But apart from rhetoric and this atmosphere, it's I think the general view was it's okay. We know President. Of course, second Trump will be a bit different because he's coming with a more understanding, and he's very desperate to make now what he's showing, and to the even more positive side, we were stuck with the end of the Biden administration. What was happening? Russia was biting kilometer by kilometer, of course, not with a huge Russian losses. I think 1 to 10 Russian losses. Like, I mean, I remember a few weeks ago there was a small account. The Russian took village, 40,000 for one village.
Yeah,
you should be really mad. Russians dead, really mad. But Russia have. We can speak about the Russian atmosphere inside of Russia, but they can still sustain this war. Economy is removing. Economic collapse because of this high inflation, and the ruble is fluctuating, and they might have problem with the oil and gas export. But still, for 5 years they have pretty good prospects. Of course, end of Biden administration was Ukrainians are losing territory piece by piece. Economy of Ukraine is very without Western support will not function. Ukrainians are not eager to go to the war anymore. I mean, not all Ukrainians. I'm sorry if there's any Ukrainians. You should then talk to me, and I will apologize.
in general,
I may say
trouble with conscription.
In Moscow, I have still my friends in Moscow. They say, "Oh, I remember." I said, "How this?" Because I live in Moscow. I said, "Well, how is this street look?" They treat us the same. We go this restaurant. Oh, still I'm one different. Which in before war they would advertise Mercedes or whatever. Now they say go to war, and this amount of money. Russians are eager to go to war because the payment. If imagine by in salary, if your payment when you join army. It's like a 20 yearly salaries. And then if you die, 20 salaries go to your family. So of course, you eager to risk. And the guys from Siberia who have no prospect, and this is like a social lift. So Trump, and especially when we sort of took positive interpretation of Kellogg's peace through strength, peace through force, eventually, sort of, why not?
Yeah.
And this would be an attempt. Trump will come with this, I want peace. Trump will enforce Putin. Of course, he forced Ukrainians, but we see Ukrainians, they have no other way. They say yes, and that is really was, I think, very dramatic for Zelensky. He agreed. Some territories will go out. There will be probably even, other concessions, but Zelensky eventually agreed. But Putin would be only agreeing if he was pressed. If you say, Putin, whether you want to negotiate now, he said, of course not. I'm winning. What negotiations happens, and we know from history, only one side is losing, or other circumstances. But Putin was not even near here. He still have power to continue. So that's why this, if we will take from all possible scenarios, Kellogg's scenario, Kellogg's plan, peace through strength, it's okay. There will be we stop. There will be like pause in killing of the people. There will be Ukraine's economy will start sort of function, but most important is of course how to resolve this issue, security of Ukraine. If not NATO, who will provide security? Then what about other big issues we were talking in the West, EU and the US, about the compensation of Russians, about justice? We should, Russians were responsible, individual Russians, we know them, responsible for atrocities. So, of course, there were many questions, but at least there was a hope that Trump might initiate some sort of movement which eventually would lead to somewhere. And this is the now questions: where would it lead? To ceasefire, I think is possible. I mean, two presidents sit together; they would share this plan with Zelensky. But that's it. The second question is how to resolve these big issues, right. Security. But there is a more dramatic question, which I don't know who is answering to this. Putin is not interested in the territories. If Putin would be interested in these few territories, he will regain. Fine. Then you say, Mr. Putin, keep these territories, and Ukraine will have peace. Right. He is interested only in hold Ukraine, first of all, and he is not seeing this possible negotiation with Trump only about Ukraine. If he will meet President Trump, eventually he will. He will. Yep. He will propose minimum Yalta 2. Right. Let's, Mr. Trump, you talk about Greenland, Panama, absolutely legitimate. And I will take this part. And let's sort of rule the world. Okay, China. Now, under the Cold War, you need to take China into account. For Russians, even more. Or Xi. Let's invite Xi afterwards to join our side. Three of us. So this is what Trump will be facing with Putin. Because we remember this in 2009 famous Medvedev European security plan. Also, sort of let's divide the security. We also remember this 2021 December, where Putin came with this very drastic plan, which was eventually NATO moving into the borders of 1991, NATO removing all the forces from the Baltic countries, whatever. So where this plan is he's still here, and Putin will bring to Mr. Trump. Absolutely, I like your style, good guy, but this is the plan. Let's divide the world, and this is where then it will be wars in all the circles of Europe, including in Eastern Europe. What would be with us?
So we have 20 minutes left. I want to make sure people can ask questions, but I have one follow-up to that. One thing that I find, I guess, easy to understand with the Trump administration is that they told everybody exactly what they're going to do. The Kellogg plan, Kellogg, for those who don't know, he's the special envoy that Trump has appointed for the resolution of the Ukraine issue or the Ukrainian war, was basically keep the tap of weapons on to increase pressure on Russia, while basically demanding that the Ukrainians give in to a ceasefire, more along the lines of what JD Vance was talking about on multiple podcasts. The other component of this is what Secretary Hicks has said today, which is the division of labor. We're gonna rethink how we put our people places, probably put more in the Indo-Pacific, and we want you, Europe, to do more and to guarantee Ukraine's security. Why does this come as a shock to European leaders when they just simply repeat what they've already said? That's the question I have, because this was the most obvious plan to come out of this today.
Today was not only this news came with a speech or whatever remarks in Europe. Also, this news about Trump calling.
It was the tweet, or I guess the Truth Social, the Truth.
But confirmed that there was conversation, and which every second sentence I might correct to President Trump.
Yes.
For example, when he says, "We Americans and you Russians, you lost millions. What about Ukrainians during the World War II?
Right.
What about Ukrainians? What about Belarusians? Lithuanians? Okay, they were like a small, but so I mean, you need to be more fair. Other countries, British, French. So well, and this is what again very much goes in the line of Putin. Oh, Mr. President, we lost, you lost. No, we're equal. And this is what is not good. But yeah, this is I think yeah, there are big issues here.
Well, speaking of big issues, we have about 15 minutes left. I want to make sure as many people can ask questions as possible. So
I will answer short.
you'll wear your seatbelt. You'll be the non-resident fellow. So if you have a question, just put your hand up. Christina will be walking around with the microphone. Don't be.
There's no easy.
So who wants to kick us off? Oh, really? Okay. Project out.
So I just wanted to ask, to what extent do you think Putin can be trusted in any deals that he makes?
No, but I don't want to sound a bit of demonizing Putin. Of course, he has his interest. And, there might be some issues where he would agree, but as I said, the problem is with Putin that he don't want small, he want big. That's why he only will agree, he only will stop and compromise when there is a big. He sees that a big. So he is not and this is what very much now goes with the Lithuanian experience as a country bordering to Russia and living 100 years. You can only force Russia to agree when they are in trouble. We regained our independence after World War I. Russian Empire was breaking thanks to Lenin and thanks to World War I, Tsarist Russia's ineffectiveness to fight, and we became independent. The same after Perestroika, thanks to Mr. Gorbachev and ineffective Russia's Soviet economy. So you cannot talk with Russia when they are in the strong position. So this is simply, so this is not question trust or not trust. No, we are not simply, we are not here to talk. And of course, Putin has his own priorities. And this is what you negotiate with Putin, you need to, first of all, his priority, he is controlling big mafia state. And of course, he wants this mafia state to remain. All these financial flows, export of oil, and he will not let any negotiations to in the direction where his mafia state is hit. He's very much interested in his personal survival, his power, and definitely he will not agree with anything which would compromise the decision of International Criminal Court to. Of course, it's not biting him, but it's a bit not pleasant. So definitely he might ask also be compensated to remove. So this is what, and of course, Ukraine. And this is where, you know, if there is any, I mentioned one crazy thing with NATO enlargement, with NATO being enemy. Ukraine, and this is very specific, Putin's, but not only his surrounding, that Ukraine is, you know, their history is so much interrelated with Russia. But at the same time, Ukraine is anti-Russia. So for Russians to live near this anti-Russia, not because they don't like, anti doesn't mean that Ukrainians don't like Russians. Many Ukrainians and Russians would have had family links and friendship, but for Russians, this Eastern So when you split this former Russian empire into, there are Lithuania, Poland, but in two big blocks, Russia, which is the Mongol Tatar Russia, and Ukraine, which is Western orientation, Catholic, Christianity, and so on. So this is for Russia. They will not, for Putin, this is too much to live in near this, and he will not agree with anything less than deleting Ukraine from the map. And this is where it's not a question about trust or not trust. Trust is like you play cards. This is something bigger.
Maybe you could sign an executive order to change the name, but sorry, sorry.
Dave Wilbur. I note that none of these major players are, I got it wrong?
There you go.
There we go. Thank you. My name is Dave Wilbur. I note that most of these major players in the current chaos are older gentlemen. I wonder, is there really a long-term vision in anybody's minds in Europe, let's say beyond the 4 or 5 years of this?
About Russia, this war.
Yes, and the territorial aspirations as well as the various defense industry.
Then we need to come back to the initial year where Russia in 1990s became independent under Yeltsin. Russia started democratic market reforms. So I think this was when Europe was really happy to see this. So of course our aspirations remain the same. Russia, democratic, market-driven Russia, which is not occupying the neighbors and not killing internally people who are unhappy with this regime. So this vision the same. So I would, and very few, unfortunately, in Europe are thinking along this line. Of course, everyone is preoccupied with Russia, and everyone is preoccupied with how to resolve. But I think long term, if you look to the long term, of course, I would think Lithuania would live in peace when east of us we will have peaceful and democratic Russia. But we are so far now from this. But why not to start investing our intellectual as center institute? Let's invest into the future of Russia.
You know?
Yeah.
Based on what you said, do you see, do you envisage any Western rapprochement with Russia while Putin is alive? Any kind of reconciliation?
The easiest answer is imagine a Western rapprochement with Hitler. So then the picture becomes clear. That's not, of course, how can you talk with Hitler? But I would imagine if there would be something, when World War II started to move into the direction where there was clear that there is an end of Germany is somewhere in 1 or 2 years, but it's here. But sort of 42, 43, if someone would offer this formula, okay, war is very bad, let's sit down and talk. I would believe there would be people who say, okay, Hitler, wow, responsible for so many killings, but better to stop this war. So I would imagine there will be people in Europe who say, okay, let's talk with Putin, let's agree. But in Lithuania, I mean, you will be suicidal if you offer this idea. but in generally in Europe, I think there might be some people who say, yeah, why not? Because I was ambassador, and this was around I think months before the war, January, one by one, Chancellor Scholz, President of Germany, President Macron, everyone was coming to Russia. All it was very clear. Putin is interested of receiving these guys because he wants to feel himself as an equal. But the war is coming and he will not stop. And but these guys were coming. I think this was a big mistake. It was actually encouraging Putin to, but Western leaders were saying, "Oh, Lithuanians, you don't know. Better try and fail." So I don't know which
rather than asking the question in terms of whether the Europeans have a view of negotiating with Putin, how do the Germans likely view the issue? Since they seem to be somewhere between the view of those in the eastern states in the EU versus the western states of the EU.
And you are just answering to your self question. Europe, there is no Europe. There are individual countries. We are not United States of Europe. We are the European Union. There are many areas of our integration. Trade of the European Union is we give up trade, external trade. It's European Commission is negotiating. There are many other policies, but foreign and security policy still remains national, and we only coordinate. Our ministers come together, so there is no Europe, and so this is one answer. Secondly, Germany, definitely this is key player, but German relation with Russia, we know, is very specific. I saw so many Germans coming to Russia, St. Petersburg, my period, Moscow period. Of course, I understand Germans. They were sort of having this background of Germany invading Russia, Soviet Union, and being responsible for the feelings of the people. Of course, any German rhetoric was very much with this historical background. So I have nothing against Germans. They have their own history. But of course, and then of course, after Soviet Union, all this leadership with better, and they came with a very simple formula: Russia first. Whatever happens, Ukraine, Russia first. Baltics want to join NATO, Russia first. And then, as a deviation of this, was a formula of mutual dependency, which I organically accept. We buy Russia's oil and gas. We become dependent on Russian, but they are dependent on us because they sell to us. So there's a tube. So on both sides, we want to buy and they want to sell. It's a mutual dependency. But we didn't realize that in the time when it was offered to Yeltsin and became at the end of this tube, now there is a guy who not interested in the fortune of his country. He is not interested. If Putin will be electable politician of Russia, and who would think about what next election will bring to me, how I will present to Russia, but he's not electable, and he's not interested in. He is actually now with this war sacrificing future of Russia, economic development, and even if this war will end, even it will be easing of sanctions, these consequences of this Russia's war economically would be felt for ages. Not least that none of Western businessmen would rush to go and to invest into Russia. So in Germany, I understand Germans, but at the end their policy failed, and now we have elections in Germany, elections in France, a bit of a lack of leadership. In Europe, first reaction European was, oh, we need European Trump. So we need someone who is with a strong. There are no leaders. There are no leaders of Adenauer, World War II, or others who were ruling this, who brought Europe after World War II into this European and then European Union's status. We do not have leaders, unfortunately.
Well, I was going to add to that. The political trends in Europe would suggest that the future of the two largest states, France and Germany, may start to look more like the United States in terms of political outlook towards Russia than like your leadership in Lithuania. So I don't think the prospects of European integration response to the potential for Yalta II are high. What are your thoughts on that?
This European
Prospect of AfD becoming a major player in German politics in ways it has not been.
You should explain what is AfD is.
Nazi Party of Germany.
Anti-immigration body. I think there are much more colors on European scale. Because one is that apart from Germany, which French-German engine was moving Europe after World War II, this engine lost power, and so there is, and we are still waiting who will come. People are looking to the Nordic Baltic region, with especially now with the Finnish membership to NATO. There's sort of like UK. So there is of course, it's not EU, but still in the broader European scale. There is of course many debates that with the Trump moving towards Pacific, we should better invest in our defense and not tomorrow. We should invest now. This is where European Union for the first time has, if Europe is run by various institutions. One is European Commission, which consists, each country gives one commissioner. So there's a Lithuanian commissioner, former prime minister twice, Andrius Kubilius, who is commissioner for defense. First time European Union started to think big about defense, not just a bit of big. And there are big plans, but unfortunately these plans are only for like 2013.
Right.
Putin might invade Lithuania tomorrow. So this is where we are a bit of late with our plans, but we are moving in this direction. And but unfortunately, I think this America moving Pacific would definitely move Europe to be more consolidated and more sort of investing into defense and security.
We have 3 questions in 3 minutes, so the questions are like 1 sentence, and then we'll try and take them all at once.
I'm always trying to understand the sensibility of Putin and those around him. And I'm frequently painting a picture of their sensibility being deeply other than our sensibility toward Europe and Russia, because of the fact that their history is filled with trauma that was sourced in Europe. The French invaded Russia, Hitler invaded Russia, and I'm always having the feeling that there's a missing piece. There's likely a whole lot more of Western, and I would say most likely British, dirty business trying to keep Russia, and especially when it was communist, from succeeding.
We just.
Is there something to my rumblings?
Yeah, I think.
Well, hold on, let's get some more questions here, just quickly.
But if I would move out of the geopolitics, which we can talk now for hours, the problem with Russia is that Russia, new Russia, what is we now have, didn't have reforms, especially in KGB and FSB now. Imagine Germany, which would have had New Germany after World War II, would have retained SS units in their country. I mean, the same. SS units will be incorporated in Germany, and we say, oh, why is this country post-World War II Germany a bit strange? Well, it's easy to understand. So Russia unfortunately didn't grasp this offer from the West in 90s. Let's come together, let's integrate. Okay, not members, but let's work together, energy plans, security plans. But because Russia's security apparatus is driven by KGB, and this is my understanding of Russia.
We have 2 more, and I rather be mindful of time, so gentlemen, come here on the back. Maybe ask them together too.
Mr. Ambassador, given your expertise in hybrid war, assuming there is going to be some sort of ceasefire, there might be a euphoria in Europe, in the United States, that it's over. Can you talk about the dangers of Russia and hybrid war in the Baltic states and Ukraine, Moldova?
You know, and this is also goes very much with my previous answer that in the 90s when we started this reconsidering, reestablish our relations, we suddenly started to be surprised. Russia is meddling into our elections. Russia is using enormous power with this trolls and bots. Russia is using all our vulnerabilities, be it social, energy, security, everything. And this is what became known as a hybrid or malign operations. Because the mindset of Russians are not that, okay, I see Americans, how can I do business with them? I mean, that would be ideal. I would love this type of Russians. But Russia said, okay, Americans talking, they have something like that. Let's use other forms. Let's corrupt them. Let's offer some lucrative deals, which gray zone deals. This is what Russia wants. This is what Russia eager. Is Russia they are master because KGB is ruling this country. We have this joke that in Soviet Union was KGB was inside country. Now we have KGB on top of the country. This is what the answers. All these answers are.
Last question, the gentleman in the back, and then I'll have to call it.
Great. Quick question. In a recent trip to Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia this fall, I experienced the fact that there are large disaffected minorities of Russians living in all three countries. How does that get resolved over time, and does it present a threat, an internal threat?
So minorities, as we call them, the Russians in three Baltic states have quite different situations and the historical background. Yes, Latvia, Estonia is really majority of those Russians who live in these countries are exported. So when after World War II, when we were finally incorporated as part of the Soviet Union, of course, there was a bit of, and many of our people were either killed or sent to Siberia, or like probably Krista knows very well, some of them emigrated to the West. So of course, there was a need. So Russian engineers, labor force were moving in this. Riga was very industrialized town, Tallinn. That's why there is much higher percentages. In Lithuania, this percentage of Russians became much more lower. In Latvia, we calculate around 30% of Russian speakers. It's huge. In Estonia, 25%. In Riga, half population is Russian speakers. It's enormously sensitive. In Lithuania, 6% of Russians. And the reasons as Lithuania was less industrialized. Secondly, Lithuania have also another minority, Polish minority, but also Lithuania's post-World War II guerrilla fighters, Forest Brothers. Also, now if you're a Russian engineer graduate of Moscow and say, go to Lithuania, Soviet, Lithuania, okay, let's go to Estonia. So we find it the end. So when we regain independence, conditions offered for local Russians are different. We have this pleasure to offer zero. So everyone living in territory, Russian, Jewish, Lithuanians, we all became citizens of Lithuania. In case of Latvia, Estonia, they were split. There is still this category non-citizen. And this is, we Lithuanians, knowing that this is not good from European, human European perspective, it's not good. In your country, you have non-citizens. People with this gray passport, we say, you are nothing. You're zero. You're not living in this country. De facto, yes, but not as a citizen. But we didn't criticize them. Why? Because we know that geopolitically they were right to make this distinction. And that leads me to this situation that in Estonia is a better situation. In Latvia, still very split society. Russians and non-Russians living like in two separate worlds. Media, lives, they will not meet each other. Sometimes I was told. In Lithuania situation, of course, there are some Lithuanians who follow, but there are Lithuanians who follow Russian media, and they speak about war in Ukraine, that Zelensky started the war, sort of. Yeah, so there are Russian speakers, but majority of Russian speakers are well integrated. I have colleagues in the Russians in the foreign ministry of Lithuania, in defense forces of Lithuania. There are high commanders, loyal Lithuanian citizens, even Russians. So this is a bit of difference. But agree, there is a strategically problem. But the problem is how to embrace them, how to make us part of our fabric, democratic fabric.
With that, we're only 5 minutes over, so I want to thank the ambassadors. We'll arrange this, and thank you all for coming. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.